Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Battle Camp. My name is Rahul J. Chand, and again, I have a very special guest. John, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Pleasure to be here again.
Pleasure to meet you again. Right, okay, so I messaged you because I really wanted to speak to you about UFC 259. A lot went down over the weekend. But before we talk about the fights themselves, what I wanted to kind of get your feeling on is obviously you're someone that has pretty much been to 99.99% of UFC events in the last kind of 2 or 3 years, right? How did this feel during fight week? Leading up to the actual fight night compared to other events. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, listen, the excitement was definitely there. I mean, 3 title fights, a ton of great fights overall. A big card, and I thought all the fights, especially the title fights, had such interesting meaning, behind them. I mean, obviously you've got Israel Adesanya, going up for the champ history and the undefeated record that he had, and you think about what was on the horizon, potentially facing John Jones, potentially going up to heavyweight. So there was a lot going on there. Amanda Nunez, Megan Anderson, I think we all knew, unfortunately, that was probably going to be a pretty one-sided fight. But with Amanda Nunez, every time she fights, you're looking at the women's GOAT. I think you got to soak it in. You're only going to get so many chances to watch the greatest of all time do it. And then, of course, Aljamain Sterling versus Petr Yan. To me, that was such an intriguing fight, stylistic clash. And, of course, they had a little heat as well. So all that was good. So I would say that there was buzz there. I will say, unfortunately, though, we did do a press conference at the Apex. And, it's funny. We've been doing this, as you said, for a year with no fans, right? I mean, this pandemic is nothing new, but we haven't done a whole lot of press conferences without fans. And I will say that day felt a little flat, if I'm being honest. I just missed the fans being in there, kind of cheering and booing and, clapping at the right people. So that part felt a little flat, unfortunately, in person. And I think I saw some comments online. There were a lot of fans felt like maybe it didn't live up, but that to me didn't dampen any of the enthusiasm for the fights. Man, this was a big card. When you're calling something the card of the year and it's only March, it's because you don't think there's going to be anything better. So there was definitely some excitement for it.
Yeah, I think the reason why I wanted to kind of get that kind of feeling from you is because myself as a fan, I was like so excited about this card, like you say, 3 title fights. But leading up to it, I found myself kind of, when they're releasing Embedded and I see it, it's kind of like when it's a big fight, I can't help myself but just to watch it straight away. And this week, I don't know what it was, but I was looking forward to the fights, but like, the pre kind of hype, I suppose there wasn't really any big, massive beefs going on or anything.
That's it. There's nothing to do. I mean, God bless the embedded people who are still putting this thing together, but everybody's stuck in a bubble, and they've gotten a lot more. They've gotten a lot more strict as time has gone on because we've seen fights get lost on fight week, and obviously the UFC is trying to do everything they can to prevent that from happening. So, we didn't have a full bubble here in Vegas, but we have these hotels. It's a Residence Inn. It's just a pretty generic hotel that the UFC has taken over, and they house the UFC athletes. And they used to let people kind of leave and go to gyms and do stuff like that. But they realized, like, hold on, man, if we're bringing you, we're putting you in the safe environment, but then we allow you to go just work out at Extreme Couture whenever you want, or go work out at Syndicate wherever you want. We're allowing you to be exposed to other people, right? So it defeats the entire purpose, as you said. So, they've really tightened the restrictions. So yeah, now it's like, well, here we are sitting around the hotel playing video games or watching TV. I mean, there's nothing to do.
What do you do then during fight week? Like, do you just play computer, or like what is it that you?
Fortunately for me, the only time I have to quarantine is on Saturday morning. So we test early in the week, and because I live here in Vegas, we get to go home. Now they do ask us. They say, "Listen, please follow the CDC guidelines." So it's not like I go out and eat or do stuff like that. I mean, I stay at my house and I respect the guidelines. But fortunately, the only time I have to go is I have to get up at 6 a.m. on Saturday mornings and go take a test. And then I just sit in a hotel room until the fights that afternoon. But honestly, like, I have a son that's at home and he's got homeschooling, so Saturday morning is like the only time I get a nice quiet room to myself. So I just crawl in bed and get a nap before the fights, basically.
I bet you can't wait to get to the hotel. Tell your missus, right, I'm going to work. I'm sorry. I got to leave you to
Sorry, babe. It's I'm making sacrifices here. It's what you got to do.
So 15 fights, right? So, I mean, we do get, quite a lot of fights on certain cards, but 15 fights is more than usual. How did that feel kind of sitting there from start to finish?
Yeah, I mean, it's a long night. You think about like the broadcasters. I mean, it was like 7.5 hours on air. You know what I mean?
Mm,
So it was a long night. But fortunately, man, the fights were so good, and the prelims were so entertaining. I mean, you could say in a lot of ways the prelims stole the show a little bit. I mean, even as heavily anticipated as those title fights were, the main event, it wasn't a bad fight, but it
mm,
wasn't a barn burner. You know what I mean? It was kind of tactical and kind of slow to develop. Sterling and Jan obviously ended in such a weird way. And of course, Nunez was a dominant. So it was a good main card. But honestly, man, the prelims were banging from the start. And so even though it was 15 fights, I didn't ever really feel that way. I mean, even when you went like on the middle prelims and you had a lot of decisions with Askarov and Phillips and Cruz, they still were very entertaining fights.
yeah,
So
yeah,
honestly, it's a long day. 15 fights is a long time to just keep your attention and to when you're, especially for me, because when I'm there, I'm doing play by play and I'm doing live scoring, and so I'm doing the round scores for everybody, and
mm,
it's you just want to make sure you're not you're dialed in. Your attention can't fade because all of a sudden a round ends and you're like, oh God, who won that round? You know what I mean? So you got to
yeah,
be kind of dialed in. So it's a long night, but I mean, look, it's a long night of watching. It's a long night of watching the sport you love. You know what I mean? So it's like if I'm gonna sit here and complain like, oh, 7.5 hours of fights, man, there's a lot worse ways to make a
yeah.
living. So no complaints from me.
Especially under current circumstances and how the world's been over the last year, you got to be grateful for the things, you're actually doing what you enjoy. So
That's it.
So just a quick one then, just because just intrigued me because it said you do the scoring and the play-by-play, and I've always wondered, just kind of, you guys type actual paragraphs and stuff about the action, how it's going on. So how do you watch and type at the same? Like, how did you get so good at typing?
It is a skill. It is, and you know what's funny is like I am not very good at typing. You would think after all these years of being a writer for a living and I'd
Mm.
be a better type. I needed like I always say like I'm gonna spend some time like taking like some typing tutor classes. 'Cause I feel like if I could type faster, I could like double my output. But yeah, it's a skill you develop, man, for sure. And because you're not hearing the commentary or anything either, you know what I mean? So
Mm,
if you're doing it at home, you can cheat a little bit sometimes because if you're not watching the screen, like let's say you need to look at your screen that you're typing on, you can still hear the commentary. And if they say,
mm.
"Oh, what a great right hand," you're like, "Oh, lands a great right hand," But you can't
Yeah.
do that when you're there in person. So yeah, it's a skill you kind of master because I do have to look down at my keyboard every now and then or look down at the screen and make sure I haven't made any mistakes. So
Mm.
it's years and years and years of doing that every single Saturday night, basically.
So do you can you? But the thing is now, no crowds and whatnot. Can you actually hear DC or Rogan or whoever's commentating while they're sat there watching?
You can't. It depends on the building we're in. At the Apex is based like this big sound stage.
Mhm.
It's a beautiful thing, but it's weird. It's almost a vacuum because they have so much like sound dampening equipment in there because it's designed to be a sound stage. You know what I mean? Now, like when we were at, say for instance, we were in Jacksonville or even in Abu Dhabi, you could hear them easily because it's just like in Jacksonville, that was just a big shell of an arena, so every sound would echo everywhere. You could hear it really. So at the Apex, the only time you can really hear it is if they get loud, like if somebody screams something or just gets enthused about something. You can definitely hear that. But when you're in Fight Island or when we're in Jacksonville, you could hear it easy because like I said, it's not a sound dampening room.
It's not built for that purpose. All right, so let's talk
Exactly.
about the fights themselves because that's what people want to get your opinion on. So
Sure.
let's start with the main event. So Jan Blachowicz defended and retained his title against Israel Adesanya. So I suppose the first question is, did anything surprise you about the fight? How it played out?
Yeah, it did. I was surprised it took. I won't say it took Jan so long to go to his wrestling because he did try it a little bit early, but just didn't have the success. So I was surprised that the wrestling and the ground game didn't play more of a factor early in the fight. I thought that would be Jan's strategy. I was also a little bit surprised at Israel's output. I think his output. I think he was having some success on the feet. I think the jab was working. I think his movement, everything that we thought would be beneficial for him. I thought it was working. I just think he needed to turn up the volume a little bit. So the pace of it surprised me a little bit. And I'll be honest, scoring it live, I actually scored it for Israel Adesanya. I gave him rounds 1, 2, and 3, while I gave 4 and 5 for Jan Blachowicz. But it was funny because I felt like Jan was the deserving winner of the fight. Like if you were looking at like Pride style, back in the day when you
He's
were
done
judging a
more.
fight as a whole, I
Yeah.
thought Jan was the rightful winner. I was a little surprised at the 4-1 score. I thought 2 was really, really close. Even though I gave 1, 2, and 3 to Adesanya, I thought 2 was really, really close. So 3-2 either way wouldn't have surprised me. The 4-1 surprised me a little bit. The 10-8 in the fifth round that two of the judges gave surprised me a little bit. I didn't think that was needed. So yeah, it was a little bit of an odd fight to me overall. I guess it didn't quite end in the spectacular fashion that you hoped one way or the other.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean. But in terms of Israel Adesanya's performance, do you think he underperformed, or do you think Jan Blachowicz negated his skills?
Boy, I hate to say that I think Israel underperformed, because then I think that takes away from what Jan did. You know what I mean? I feel like we're constantly taking away from Jan and what he
Yeah,
accomplishes, and
yeah,
and I feel like he's struggling for recognition. I mean, right? He said it to Dana White afterwards. You don't believe in me, right? And and I think that's unfortunately a hallmark of Jan's career. And I think part of that is because certainly John Jones left the division, and I think anybody that would have taken the title after John Jones by not beating John Jones would have faced some criticism. But yeah, I feel like Israel Adesanya could have won this fight had he just turned up the volume a little bit, had he just been a little bit busier, been a little bit more active. I feel like he was having success on the feet. And so I do feel like it was a little bit of a flat performance from Israel Adesanya, which is a little bit surprising because, thus far in his career, he has delivered, 110% in every situation like that. So I hate to say it because I feel like we're taking away from Jan Blachowicz. I don't want to do that because he does deserve credit. But yeah, I feel like this fight was there for Israel to win, and he just didn't quite do what it took to get it done.
I just want to give you an opinion. I just want to get your opinion on my opinion,
Sure.
basically. So, just I was thinking about this particular fight and Israel Adesanya's performances since he's been part of the UFC roster, and I kind of came to this conclusion that Israel Adesanya looks good against fighters that he can counter strike against effectively. And Jan Blachowicz was striking with him, but he was defensively minded, and he wasn't coming into range or being kind of over expansive in his movement and kind of taking risks effectively. And we've seen Israel Adesanya struggle a little bit against Yoel Romero when there's a puzzle there in front of him. Jan Blachowicz was a different kind of puzzle in terms of the output that he and the way he was striking and attacking. Do you think that we've gotten a bit excited about Israel Adesanya because does that make sense?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, if you think about it, go through it, right? Yoel Romero. Why did Yoel Romero got a lot of criticism for that fight? And I understand that fight was not great. But why did Yoel just stand there and do nothing? Because he was proving a point. I'm not going to play your game, Israel Adesanya. You are going to have to come to me. And if that means I have to stand here stationary in the center of the cage and get booed at, I don't care. That's what we're going to do. So you're absolutely right. So then why did everybody get excited when they made the Paulo Costa matchup? Well, we know Paulo Costa ain't going to stand in the center of a cage and just stand there, right? Like he's
Yeah.
coming at you. He's going to get aggressive. So yeah, you're absolutely right about that. It's very Anderson Silva-esque in a lot of ways. Anderson Silva was so phenomenal but Anderson Silva was great at baiting you. He'd put the hands
Mm,
down. He would taunt you a little bit. He'd kind of tease you a little bit and play the game so that you would come do it. Again, similar to like what Nick Diaz did against Anderson Silva, where he's like, I'll lay down on the damn ground if I have to. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? So you're absolutely right about that. Now, as far as does that mean we shouldn't be excited about Israel Adesanya? I mean, no, look, dude, Israel Adesanya's striking is on another level, man. It is unbelievable. His mastery of range and distance and footwork and countering, it is amazing. But you are right. If he doesn't have a willing dance partner, I think this was an opportunity to kind of show that you can turn it up when you need to, and he didn't quite do it. And whether that was a little bit of a mental block because yeah, you are going against the bigger, stronger guy, and while you said it doesn't matter, maybe you're a little worried about getting clipped. Maybe too, it's this point in his career where he's this budding superstar. Now he's this global iconic brand. He's got this global deal with Puma, and people are talking about him being a transcendent star along the lines of Conor McGregor. Maybe he was, maybe that's going into his mind where it's like, I can't just be free out there. I gotta protect the brand. I gotta make sure I don't lose, because if I lose, some of this stuff goes away. So you never know exactly what it is. But you are right. I think what we saw, if we hadn't seen it already, was not necessarily a deficiency in his game, but an opportunity for people to exploit when you realize that that's probably the behavior that he's going to display.
Okay, all right. Enough about Israel because I want to talk about Jan. He deserves the spotlight because he's earned it, And I think the problem with Jan is, and it's not his problem. It's my problem as a fan of the sport. The way I perceive Jan is his entry into the organization and his kind of rocky road, and his kind of every time he fights someone, and he's clearly showing improvement. I just seem to remember him losing, and when he first joined the organization, like he's a different man to who he was when he joined the organization. Tell me your opinion on that. Tell me what you think has clicked with him, and how he's improved.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's changed his teams. He went back to his original team. He's changed kind of his behaviors, and you're right. He's made a lot of adjustments since he first came into the UFC. And he said it. He realized what the mistakes were, what needed to be fixed, and he addressed them. And he's done that. And he's fighting on a different level right now, and he deserves a lot of credit for his skills. It is tough. He's not the most marketable guy, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously the legendary Polish power. That's his catchphrase, but I mean, I don't know. What does that do for anybody? Unless you're from Poland. If you're from Poland, it's probably pretty cool. You know what I mean? But for everybody, he just does, and it's, he speaks good English, but he's just very simple. And so he's not, going to be the most eloquent guy, or he's not going to trash talk. He's very respectful, so it's just, I think people have a hard time kind of, what's the hook here? What are we doing? Obviously you look at Adesanya, you know what the hook is. He's this completely different person than anything we've ever seen. So I think it's tough. He's not the most marketable guy ever, but he's certainly skilled, and he's certainly a deserving champion. And I mean, I think there's still going to be people that are critics, right? He didn't beat John Jones. Oh, you beat Dominic Reyes. What is that? Oh, well, now you just beat a middleweight. You know what I mean? So there's still going to be people that probably doubt him, but listen, I think he's great, and I think the idea of him and Glover Teixeira, probably me as a guy that's turning 43 in the next week, as an old guy, I like seeing these older guys get their opportunities and get the spotlight. So I'm excited for that one. But yeah, man, Jan is a deserving champion, and deserves some respect. In fact, we at MMA Junkie actually just put him at #1 in the world in our world rankings. We had, even when John Jones stepping aside, we still had him at #1 at light heavyweight. But you know what? Since John Jones fought last, Jan Blachowicz has gone 3-0. You know what I mean? And won the title and defended the title. So we've actually got Jan at #1 and John at #2. And of course, we'll move John to heavyweight once he makes that debut. But we've got Jan at #1 right now.
So is that a global, as in any organization, or is it okay? Cool. So
that's right. Yeah. So we do our rankings with everybody together. So you'll see the Bellators in there. The occasional PFL, occasional one championship, like Francis Demetrius Johnson. Still have him ranked up very high as well. So yeah. So we rank all the organizations together.
Cool. So there's no word on when Glover Teixeira and Blachowicz will be.
All we know is that Jan on Saturday night said, "Listen, I just had a baby, and I was in training camp for most of it, and I want some time." He says, "So give me about 6 months." I'm sure they could probably tighten that up a little bit, but yeah, I'd probably look around September, somewhere around there.
Cool. All right. Co-main event. Amanda, we kind of touched on her earlier on, Amanda Nunez and Megan Anderson. So look, man, here's my kind of view on Amanda Nunez. I struggle to talk about her so much, because it's just like every time she fights, I have no, what's the right way of saying this without being rude? I have no faith that her opponent can beat her. Do you know what I mean? So it's hard to kind of get hyped about her fights. And like you said earlier, it's just about absorbing her greatness and understanding that, she is just levels above her opponents. So kind of as the fight was starting, as Megan Anderson and then Amanda Nunez walked out, did you have that feeling of, oh, this is a title fight? Like, did you know what I mean?
I look, I completely understand where you're at, and it sucks because I don't want to disrespect Megan Anderson, you know what I mean, or any opponent. I know the sacrifices that she's made, and I know that Megan Anderson is an elite level athlete. You know what I mean? It's just that when you put him up against Amanda Nunes, yeah, you're right. I didn't give Megan much of a chance, I mean, and again, I don't mean that as any disrespect. It's just I think Amanda Nunes is operating on an entirely different plane. It's like it's the comparison that I always make is like Tiger Woods, right? Phil Mickelson is a hell of a golfer, you know what I mean? But he'll always pale in comparison because he just happened to be playing at the same time as Tiger Woods, who was, the greatest ever, So I think going against Amanda Nunes is like that. And you could see it right away. I mean, when Amanda, the first punch landed, I feel like it was already done at that point. Megan was stunned and probably just not knowing what to do next. And then once the fight went to the floor, I mean, you could literally see Amanda like going through her options in her head, like, yeah, do I want to punch? Do I want to choke? Nah, you know what? I'll do this triangle armbar, you know? So
Yeah.
it was incredible. So I get it, man. I understand why people, you know, when the fight's announced, you just go, whatever. I mean, Amanda's going to win. But the way I kind of look at every Amanda Nunes fight is the way I did with Mike Tyson fights back in the day. You know what I mean? It's no disrespect to the opponent, but I'm not watching you. You know what I mean? I'm looking to see how fast Amanda Nunes gets you out of there. You know what I mean? And it's it sounds disrespectful to say that, but I just think that's how great Amanda Nunes is. And you know, maybe another fight with Valentina Shevchenko is in order at some point. I almost feel bad for Valentina in those fights just because I think, to me, honestly, Valentina and Amanda are like 1A and 1B. I think they're both amazing martial artists. It's just Amanda's so much bigger. You know what I mean? So it's just
Yeah.
tough for Valentina to get in there. I like the idea of maybe Kayla Harrison at some point down the road, but of course they do train together and they are teammates. And of course, obviously Kayla's in the PFL right now. So I mean, there are a couple fights. Those are two fights that I think could at least test her a little bit. But yeah, I understand why people don't necessarily get excited, but I just you know, advise everybody look at it a little bit differently when she's fighting.
Yeah. So just a quick one on Kayla Harrison, because I've heard her name quite a bit. We don't get PFL here in the UK.
Mm.
So like, what is your opinion on her as a fighter, her skills and whatnot?
She's legit. Two-time Olympic judoka, gold medalist. Trains an American top team. Absolute physical specimen. She's bigger than Amanda Nunes. She would be cutting down to be Amanda Nunes' size. I know it's not something that's well publicized, but I know that she's gone through all the testing at the UFC Performance Institute because she's been there with some of her teammates.
Mhm.
Um, and the numbers that she's registered and all the physical measurables are just off the charts. I mean, she is an absolute specimen of an athlete, a competitor, man, just, you know, mean, to be honest with you. So still developing. I mean, obviously, her striking is nowhere near Amanda Nunes' level. She's working on it to get better, but her grappling, I mean, she's been doing judo since she was a little kid at the highest level. So I mean, her clinch game, her ground game is off the charts, and she was able to, you know, to get past the striking range and you know, she does pack some power, but that would be kind of like a puncher's chance type thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She wouldn't be nearly as technical, but if she could initiate into the clinch or get the fight to the ground, it would be super intriguing. So yeah, PFL, I think they're working on some global distribution, so hopefully you'll get something in the UK. Their 2021 season kicks off in a couple months, and she'll be competing in that once again, you know, looking to win another $1 million.
Yeah, their lightweight men's tournament looks quite tasty. There's a few names in there that I recognise. So yeah, I'll keep an eye out for that. But it's a bit of an indictment on the quality. Don't want to say the quality of opposition because it's not the quality. It's Amanda's just way kind of above them. But
Yeah.
we're talking about Kayla Harrison as a potential at some point in the future. She's not even in the same organization, you know.
She's not in the same organization. She's not in the same weight class, and they train together. But we're still talking about it. That's how much we're looking for things, man.
Yeah. So all right. So next fight for Amanda, then bantamweight, featherweight. I'd imagine bantamweight now, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks like she's going to go to 135 next. I think they're going to try to turn her around quick and do something in the summertime with her. Juliana Pena is calling her out. Juliana Pena actually did an interview with Nolan King from MMA Junkie just yesterday, actually. And she was saying, you know, hey, give me the opportunity. You know, I think I'm her kryptonite. I think I have the style to beat her. But she was saying, let's do it on the night before Mother's Day. We're both moms. She just had a kid. I have a kid. Let's do two moms, you know, getting it down the night before Mother's Day. I was like, I like it, man.
Yeah,
Two
I'll
badass moms throwing down. Yeah, I can sell that.
Although Mother's Day in England is actually this coming Sunday. I know it's different with you guys. So when's Mother's
Yeah.
Day?
So it'd be so ours in the US it's the second Sunday in May. So it'd be right. I think
Okay.
May 10th or
All
somewhere
right.
around there. Yeah.
Because Pena was signed to fight Holly Holm. Has that's fallen through now, isn't it, or something?
Yeah, exactly. Holly has some medical stuff that she's dealing with right now, so she had to withdraw from that. So there you go. I mean, that we were kind of looking at that as a number one contender fight, I think, in a lot of ways. Now
Mhm.
Holm can't compete, so Pena saying, you know, why make me fight? And it's funny because we brought up the name to Amanda over the weekend on Saturday, and she's like, you know what? Let her fight Jermaine Durandame. Like, let her fight one more. And Juliana came back in the interview with Nolan King and said, why am I the one that has to fight one more? You didn't tell Megan Anderson to fight one more. You know, you didn't tell this opponent to fight one more. Why is it me that has to fight one more? Let's
Yeah.
just do this. Are you scared or not? Let's do
Mhm.
this. So yeah, sounds like that may be the fight. I think it'll be interesting because Pena, if you don't know, if you haven't followed her career, and she's been out for a while because she did, you know, she had a child, she took some time off for that. she don't mind talking. She
Yeah.
is full of confidence, and she does not mind talking. So while I think most of Amanda's opponents, have entered with reverence and say, hey, look, she's great, but I think this is my night. I think this is my moment. But she's amazing. I respect her, but Juliana won't have that. She'll come in and be like, you've been scared of me. You've been ducking me. I'm going to, it'll give it a
Yeah.
little bit different dynamic. So if you've had trouble getting up for Amanda Nunes fights, this might be the one that gets you, because, you'll cheer for her, or you'll want to see her get her ass beat, basically.
I remember, was she on the Ultimate Fighter or something?
Yeah.
I remember her from there. And obviously I've seen her fights, but I remember her personality, and like you say, she's good with the words. No, I totally get where you're coming from with that. Yeah.
Yep.
So all right, this is the fight. This was my main event, right? Obviously Sterling against Peter Yan going into the fight. So I'll just briefly tell you what my kind of prediction for the fight was going into, and I just want to get your feeling on it. I kind of felt that there were kind of two ways in which this fight will play out. One, Sterling, because obviously he's unorthodox and things of that nature. He'd cause Yan a lot of problems, and he'd be able to use his unorthodox movement and striking to get Yan to the ground. And one of the things that I kind of foresaw was because Sterling is quite unorthodox, he sometimes leaves himself off balance, and Yan is so accurate and he's so fundamentally sound with his striking that those might be areas in which he can exploit in terms of landing strikes, etc. We saw some of that was correct, but we also saw a different fight in Yan being able to take Sterling down on multiple occasions throughout the fight, which was something that I didn't foresee at all. So what was your kind of feeling going into the fight, and what was your feeling after the fight actually happened, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, I think you hit on a lot of the key subjects and a lot of the things that I felt there as well. Aljamain Sterling doesn't necessarily have the greatest takedowns, despite him being an excellent grappler. He doesn't necessarily have the greatest takedowns, but what he does really well is create scrambles, and that's why sometimes him being off balance isn't necessarily the worst thing, because he basically just ends up coming at you with some wild entry that you would never design by nature, but he uses that to transition to the back and to get to advantageous positions. So I thought the same as you. To be honest with you, yeah, it's funny because you said it was your main event. It was kind of my main event as well. Even though you're talking about a superstar and Adesanya, going for champ status, I think I was most intrigued by this because of the clash of styles, and obviously they had some heat, but that to me is all just kind of superficial stuff. It doesn't matter to me once the fight gets going. You know what I mean? To me, it was the clash of styles and all the things that you absolutely laid out. And I thought I ended up going with Aljamain Sterling, but with the understanding that, Yan could absolutely just piece him up on the feet because his striking is unbelievable, as you said, so technically crisp and fundamental sound. And man, I was just excited to see how it played out. I thought Aljamain was doing very well early, man. I thought the aggression that he laid out, I think he did lay out a blueprint of success if they end up having this rematch, which we're expecting. But you got to be able to keep it up. It was clear to me that he was fading. I had Aljamain Sterling winning 2 out of the first 3 rounds. Only one judge had it that way. 2 had 2 of the rounds for Yan, but I had Aljamain up 2-1 going into that 4th round. However, I did have Yan winning the 4th round, and it did feel very clear to me that the momentum was shifting in Yan's favor. I think if that fight plays out, you either see Yan get a finish in the 5th round, or you at least see him win the 5th round and take home the decision, because I think Sterling was fading at that point. But of course, we got the illegal knee, which was just crazy. I mean, literally, it was an involuntary reaction, but I'm sitting there cage side and he did it, and immediately my hands went in the air and I was just like, why?
Yeah.
Why?
I shouted, I was like, that's not allowed. Like, I was just watching it in bed, and that was my first reaction, to shout that out. That's not allowed.
Yeah, I was like, what are you doing, dude? Why did you throw that? Because it was completely unnecessary. And it was so weird because, the illegal knee, it wasn't like a heat of the moment type thing. It wasn't, in a scramble and, I didn't realize he was still down. I mean, there was a pause in action, and referee Mark Smith says he's down, and you line him up and hit the knee anyway. It was weird too, because there was something his corner was calling for, and he said something to his corner, but it was in Russian. I don't know what it was. We have seen the corner audio and video since then. If you've seen it, you see Pahumpa, one of the ATT head coaches, who's saying only punch. And then he's got some of his coaches that are yelling in Russian. That of course you heard on the broadcast. Habib was saying, I guess, throw the kick or throw the knee. So just bizarre, man. Very, very, very unfortunate. And what's been really unfortunate is the fallout since, because I feel like Aljamain is taking a lot of heat when it's like what did he do wrong? You know what I mean? He's the one that got hit by the knee. So
Yeah.
unfortunate ending. I'm looking forward to the rematch. I'm looking forward to him running back. Hopefully they do it next.
Yeah, I want to touch on the fallout, but before we do, I noticed this, and I'm not sure whether I'm just incorrect or whatever. And you were there, so you might have had a better view of it. But Jan knocked Sterling down, I think, in the first round or the second round. I can't remember which round it is. And I think it was towards the end of the first round, right? And it felt like it was quite a heavy knockdown, because as Sterling got back up, he was still off balance. I felt like that had a bigger impact on how the fight continued to play out. And I wasn't sure whether Sterling was still feeling the effects of that. And I just feel like that sapped a lot of energy out of him, just that knockdown. And that was why that added to his fatigue. Does that make sense to you? Or is that?
Yeah, it definitely can. No, I mean, if you get touched up like that, it definitely impacts your fatigue, especially when you talk about how your heart rate's going. There's a million factors playing there. Was there frustration that maybe his takedowns weren't as effective as he thought he was, and was that mentally draining as well? I mean, it's really weird how that happens, right? Because I mean, you look at Aljamain Sterling, you don't say, well, there's a guy that's not in very good shape. You know what I mean? Like, clearly he's put in the work, and clearly he's put in the effort. But even he admitted, he's like, yeah, man, my cardio started to fail me a little bit towards the end. So, was it just because it was a title fight? Was it because things, he's never had that opportunity before? Was it because things weren't playing out? Who knows, man? It's such a weird thing, because you can be as prepared as possible, and that guy works his ass off. But it's clear he did start to fade a little bit.
So just a quick question on Sterling, because obviously, he's kind of changed tact in terms of his training, and he's moved to Vegas, and he's at Extreme Couture, I think, isn't he? I don't know, and this is just from watching bloody, Embedded and Countdown and stuff like that, and I know we're in times of COVID, and things aren't just as easy as just going to the gym, but it kind of, I get the impression that he's kind of the leader of his own camp, if that makes sense. And he doesn't really have a head coach there with him day in, day out, saying, right, we're going to work on this and this, and this is the plan for this fight. Is that a fair statement, or am I completely off?
No, it's interesting, because I think there's something to that. I mean, I know he definitely, like, listen, he still considers himself, Longo, Sarah, those are still his head coaches. But you're right, and it's funny because he's come out to Vegas for a couple reasons. Number one, by setting up, it's just a smart financial decision. So for people that don't know, Nevada is one of the few states that doesn't have state income tax in the United States. So by setting up residency in Las Vegas, you no longer have to pay state income tax on your fight purses. So he actually owns property here and lives here part time, enough that he doesn't have to pay state income tax. Also, the UFC Performance Institute, and what they provide has become a beacon for fighters, man. They can use the rehab facilities, they can use the training facilities, they can, the dietitian, everything is there. So that's why he's here. But he does still consider Longo his head coach, but his head coach isn't here for all of it. Now, Eric Nixick is picked up some of those duties at Extreme Couture, and I'm telling you, Eric Nixick is, man, as good of a guy as you'll ever ask for in terms of work ethic, in terms of knowledge, in terms of just positive attitude, you know what I mean, and keeping people in the right direction. But yeah, I mean, if that situation is always weird to me when people do split their camps, or they do, and they're like, hey man, hey, I'm sending sparring footage home, and Ray's watching my sparring footage, and we talk about what we're gonna do on a daily basis. And I mean, Ray, obviously, he's an older guy, and has said, he kind of wants to stay at home and not travel as much, but he doesn't have to, especially during the COVID times. So it is a unique situation. I think Aljamain is pretty strong-minded in that, he thinks he knows what's best for him. And, he does certainly listen to those guys, but he is splitting his time. So it's an interesting observation. And you do wonder, would a different situation be better? I don't know. Only he knows that.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about the incident then. The illegal knee in the fourth round lands flush. And like he said, and this is something that I said in kind of my post-fight video is like, you get instances where there's a low blow or an eye poke where you can completely tell it's unintentional. But in this situation, this knee, it wasn't even as if Sterling was working his way back up to get onto his feet, and it was just mistimed or something like that, or misdirected. He was aiming for the chest and he accidentally hit the bottom of the chin or something like that. It was just premeditated, and it was just I don't want to sit here and say he intentionally tried to cheat, but he landed an illegal strike, and I think it was just a lapse of concentration and just kind of being caught in the heat of the moment, right? So that's that kind of off the table. In terms of the next kind of act, So Sterling's on the canvas. The referee's kind of walking around, working out. All right, what am I supposed to do? I've heard people talk about basically saying the referee should have called the fight off there and then. I kind of tend to disagree with that, because I don't know if this is the rule, but I assume you get 5 minutes the same way you'd get if you get a low blow or something. So I feel like you need to give the fighter the chance to recover. But then also that puts the onus back on the fighter to say, I'm good to go. I'm ready to carry on. And obviously that wasn't the case in the end. And Sterling got, a bit of backlash on social media. You deserve an Oscar, and he was acting, and he quit. So what's your view on all of that?
It's interesting, right? Here's a little side story too. That was referee Mark Smith's first UFC title fight. Can you imagine that? Your first UFC title fight, and that's the situation you get to deal with. I talked to him afterwards. I was like, well, guess what, man? It'll never be worse than that. So, yeah, it's tough. I mean, listen, it's such a thing, because was Aljamain out cold? No, he wasn't out cold, but was he affected? Yeah, I imagine he was. You know what I mean? I imagine I would think that you would at least deduct 2 points for that if you didn't go with the disqualification. I mean, that was a clear foul. As you said, the intent is always interesting, because people say, well, he didn't intentionally, well, of course, nobody says, you know what, I'm going to intentionally throw an illegal blow, but you intentionally threw the knee to a clearly downed opponent. So yes, that was your intent, was to hit him with that knee. Aljamain put out a video. If you haven't seen it yet, he tries to explain a little bit as to what was going on. It sucks, because I think we've got this, kind of macho reputation, like, just get up and go after it. You know what I mean? Like, bro, did you see the knee? Like, how he was clearly affected. I don't think it was wise for him to go on. I think he was clearly, impaired at that point. He said, look, I was dizzy. The only time that I wasn't dizzy was when I was laying flat on my back. Well, obviously you can't fight laying flat on your back. You're not going to last very long. So, I mean, just because you're conscious doesn't mean that you're like the room's not spinning, or that you can't focus, or that you can't see. And to go back into unarmed combat against a trained killer like Piotr Yan when the room is spinning, you know what I mean? Like, that ain't good. So I get it, man. I understand. It's easy to say, but look, man, you think about what these guys do, what they go through, the sacrifices they make, what they do. Like, dude, nobody's going in there to quit. Nobody's going in there to wow, you know what? If I duck out of here, I bet I'll be champion. I don't think he thought that was the case. And he even explained he assumed it would probably be a no contest. And he was like, but what am I going to do? I can't go out there and fight like this and just get knocked out and look and know that I just did it because of my ego. You know what I mean? I'm not in a condition to fight right now, and I have to admit it. And if it's no contest, it's no contest. And he took a lot of heat too for there were pictures of him with the belt, celebrating at his house. And I think it's important to note, he's not the one that posted those pictures, and he's not the one that even, I think, wanted to take the pictures, but his team and his crew that was around him, that was in Vegas, that had come to support him, they basically said, no, man, take a picture with this belt, man. This is part of your journey. You know what I mean? Like, we're proud of you, and look at what you've done. And yes, it's weird and it sucks, but you still have a UFC world title, enjoy that. And I think that's what anybody would do, right? I mean, if you were close to somebody that this happened to, you'd tell them, no, man, believe in yourself, support, we support you. So, Peter Yan and his management, I think it's key to point out as well. They took to social media and made an issue out of that. And I get it, man. That's part of the fight game. You want to sell the rematch. You want to see if you can get under his skin a little bit. But I think if you really step back and look at the situation, Aljamain, you saw how frustrated he was. He threw the belt down. You know what I mean? You could see how emotionally was. So he's physically beat up. He's emotional. And that was his crew and team saying, hey, man, we got you. We're proud of you. You're still a champion. Believe in yourself. So I think he's taken a lot of undue heat. And I think a lot of what happened afterwards is what anybody would do. So it's kind of a shame the way the whole thing's played out, but it'll make for a hell of a storyline in the rematch.
Yeah, for sure. So I actually think it's important to note, because when Dana came to wrap the belt around him, there was a split second there on the TV that I noticed Sterling was almost surprised, like, oh, I get the belt, sort of thing. And that's when he kind of took it off and threw it on the floor, and he was already kind of emotional at the time as well. And just going back to the act of being, kneed in the head, like, look, I'm not here to question the bravery of these guys, because that's unquestionable. That look what they do for a bloody living, and it's not just fight night; it's what they put themselves through for the rest of the year in order to be in shape to fight. And I know Sterling was basically saying that it's a close fight, and and whatnot, and that was straight after the fight. So you have to take that with a pinch of salt, because he hasn't had a chance to watch it back, and also he may well have been concussed. But the guy who's done an illegal blow has given Sterling the opportunity by doing something that's against the rules of the sport, and he's given him that out. Like, okay, look, even if he wasn't hurt, he's got that opportunity now to say, right, you know what, I don't want to continue, because he might have been feeling the momentum going against him. He might have been feeling the fatigue, etc., etc. And it's funny how nobody is sat here saying, why the fuck did he throw that knee? Like, why is everyone blaming Sterling for this? And it's really frustrating for me just watching it play out this way.
Absolutely, man. It is crazy. And clearly, I don't think Peter Yan is a dirty fighter. I think there was just a misunderstanding or miscommunication, but that's your responsibility. That's on you to know the rules. You know what I mean? That's not, and especially when Mark Smith just said, like, it wasn't like the referee was on top of it. He literally said he's downed, and then you lined it up and hit it anyway. I think there's some, if what Habib told Daniel Cormier is true, and the coaches were, obviously I don't speak Russian, so I don't know, but if they were calling for a knee, that's on them too, man. They got to take some responsibility for that, whether they want to or not. They got to take some responsibility for that. So, some discussion needs to be had there for sure. But like I said, I do hope they run the fight back. I know, I saw Kevin Iole posted a column yesterday where he said he doesn't think Jan deserves an immediate rematch. They should do something else. I think you got to run it back. I mean, look, it was on Jan. It was completely his fault. But I think even Aljamain, if you said, look, you can have anybody you want, who do you want? I think he wants Jan. He wants to prove that, hey, I deserve this. I want to earn this the right way. And like you said, man, dude, you think about the countless hours put into getting to this moment. If you think for 1 second that Aljamain was sitting there in the center of the cage and is like, man, if I just lay here, I bet they'll give me the belt. Come on, man. Nobody wants that. It's, you know what I mean? It's not even, it's because for one, it's not even about the belt. You know what I mean? The belt is sure, it's the piece of jewelry you get, but it's about knowing I'm the best in the world, man. I worked my ass off and I proved I'm the best in the world. It's not, hey, I bet I get the belt and I can hang it in my room forever and it's all mine. You know what I mean? It's not about the belt. It's about being the best in the world. And I promise you, there's no way that entered Aljamain's mind. If you think that, then you haven't spent enough time around these athletes and really learned who they are as men and women and what drives them.
Exactly. And just before we finish on this subject, you mentioned he'd rather, there's no one else in the world that he'd rather fight than Peter Yan. But Henry Cejudo and Sterling, I saw going back and forth on social media. Henry's a guy that just won't. For someone that's retired, he's talking more now than he did when he was an active fighter.
It's so true. He's funny, man. It's funny because like his was the one retirement where we were all just like, come on, man, you ain't retiring. This is a money play. You'll be back. It is funny. I like him a lot, man. I think a lot of people the cringe stuff turns them off, but to me, man, I think it's just funny. It is frustrating though. You're like, dude, if you're gonna talk, like at least you got to take a fight at some point. Like if you're gonna jump in there, you got to take a fight at some point. And I'm sure Aljamain would fight Henry Cejudo. That brings some attention and brings some dollars. But I think more than anything, that's just engaging and giving Aljamain a little bit of a distraction. And it doesn't hurt to. It doesn't look. You got to have some. You got to have a little, something to throw at Peter Yan's way as well, right? You know what I mean? Obviously, he's poking at you a little bit, saying, "Oh, you done celebrating yet, champ?" Da, 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 da. You got to be like, "I don't even know if I want to fight you again." You know what I mean? Like, come, you got to do the Conor McGregor, right? Like, beg me. You got to ask me for it. So, I think he's just having a little fun.
Yeah, I'm completely with you on the whole, Sterling and why shouldn't he pose with the belt? And it's his friends that are posting the pictures, because I saw Mirab do it, I saw Ala Quinta do it and stuff like that. The only thing that kind of bugged me a little bit was that little exchange he had with Henry Cejudo, because, and I appreciate what you were saying. I didn't really think of it from that angle, that he's just trying to, he's actually getting on Peter Yan's nerves by saying that. But yeah, it did kind of, because obviously if you're not going to, at the moment, he's not accepting being the champion in the man room, which he's got the belt. So, Yan is the guy that he has to fight next. And then that kind of leaves us open with TJ Dillashaw. What do you do with him then?
Look, man, it looks like they're putting together this Corey Sandhagen fight, which I absolutely love. I think that's right. I mean, I like TJ Dillashaw a lot, man. I like the fact that he owned up to his mistakes. I mean, sure, he had to get caught before he owned up to it, but at least once he got caught, he
Yeah,
owned up to it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I've heard too many silly excuses over the years and silly stories where it's just like, come on, man, just admit you cheated and let's move
yeah,
on. So I appreciate the fact that he did that, but because he cheated, I know he came back and he said, look, I want to fight for the title right away. That just always rubbed me the wrong way. Like, I don't think we can send that message. You know what I mean? You got to come back and at least win one fight. You know what I mean? At least win one fight. So I like that. He's still a legitimate great fighter, and I don't think he needed to cheat to be great. I think unfortunately people just do that sometimes. They're looking for that edge. Again, they're trying to be the best in the world. Sometimes it's psychological more than physiological. You know what I mean? And they make mistakes. But this would be a heck of an entry point for him to get back in there and get in that title discussion.
Cool. All right, just a couple of other things then. A story kind of broke this week with regards to Dan Hardy no longer being part of the BT Sports team and the UFC team. Do you know anything about that? What's the kind of background to that? Is that knowledge?
Yeah, no, it's kind of yes and kind of no. I know that he had some issues with it. Like the original report is true that there was an issue on Fight Island. I had heard some rumblings behind the scenes. I'll be honest with you, I don't know exactly what it was all about. I'm actually gonna reach out to Dan, and I don't know if he's gonna want to talk about it or not, but I'll give him the opportunity to do that. I had heard there was an incident on Fight Island with an employee. I don't know what it was. I know he got a little bit mad with the use of female in the headline, and I kind of understand where he's coming from because, to be clear, what I heard was basically he just got into an argument with an employee, and it had nothing. When you hear female, you think, oh, was there some kind of misconduct type of thing or whatever? It had nothing to do with that. That's it. It just happened to be an employee that was a woman, you know what I mean? But they were arguing about something completely business related, and so I did hear there was an incident. I don't know. I mean, because that was a while back, so I don't know what has happened. I think it's important too. Even the thing that he was fired. I mean, he's a contracted employee, that would be hired on an event by event basis. You know what I mean? You don't get like an annual salary. So if they've elected not to bring him back for certain events or whatever, but I don't know that that's necessarily even the term fire. I mean, I guess in some ways that's firing, but I don't think he wasn't actually fired. I think they just said, well, we're not going to use you for this event. We're not going to use you for that event, which I think Dan's okay with because he's kind of got his own YouTube channel going, right, and he's got his own thing going on. So I think he's kind of working on the independent front. So yeah, to be honest with you, I do know that there's validity to that report that came out. I just don't I don't know the exact details of exactly how everything unfolded.
Yeah, the only thing that I can't get my head around, and obviously I'm not close enough to the business to know the ins and outs, is the fact that it's the UFC and BT Sport that have chosen, or he's parted ways with both of them. Because I watch a lot of this coverage on BT Sport, and they usually show that John Gooden and Dan Hardy do kind of prior, and this time it was Anthony Smith doing it with Gooden. And then the post-fight show, they had Coach Kavanaugh on rather than Dan Hardy. So, he's not working with BT Sport anymore. So that's what kind of I can't really understand, because it's, two separate entities, isn't it? BT Sport and the UFC.
Yeah, I just, like I said, I heard it was kind of a conflict with a UFC employee, which I think it was basically just a verbal conflict. I don't know exactly, again, what the basis of it was. And I didn't see it unfold. I just heard that it happened. I guess, BT Sport as a broadcast partner would certainly have a right to hire whoever they want, I would think. But, perhaps it was a discussion that was had that, maybe they felt uncomfortable about the situation as well. I don't know. I think the employee was a European, if what I heard was correct, that the employee is a European based employee. Yes, it happened in Fight Island, but it's an employee that works out of the European office. So maybe, the proximity between BT Sports still having to work with this person, you know what I mean, made it say, well, we understand, we're going to stand by you as well. I don't know the exact full nature of it. I do intend to reach out to Dan Hardy and see if he wants to talk about it. I don't know that he will. I get the feeling he's just kind of ready to put it behind him and move forward. But it would definitely interesting to hear his side of what happened.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's got his own YouTube channel, innit? So if he's going to talk about
it, he could just turn a camera on. That's it. Like, I want to reach out, but all he has to do is in fact, he's got his own video crew, man. They can set up a multi-camera shoot and talk about it if they want, which leads me to believe that maybe he doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah, if he's going to do the exclusive, you'd imagine he'd do it on his own channel. But you're one of the best of business, so it makes sense for him to do it with you as well. So last thing I want to touch on, my boy Leon Edwards this weekend, Bilal Muhammad, late, well, not that late, but kind of a late replacement. So Bilal Muhammad's a guy that I'm aware of. I've seen him fight, but he's not really someone that I paid a very close attention to because he's never really been in that picture of the top 10 or kind of,
Sure.
or, even though he's on a good run at the moment. What dangers will Bilal Muhammad bring to Leon Edwards this weekend?
Bilal's a good striker. He's tenacious. He's relentless in terms of pressure and getting in your face. And you know, he's a well-rounded fighter. You know what I mean? But more than anything, it's just his durability and his aggression. And this is clearly a big step up in class for Bilal Muhammad. But it's an amazing opportunity for him. And you know, I think Leon's style is one that Bilal will be okay with. You know, Leon again is not a specialist that, you know, is the greatest jiu-jitsu guy on the planet, the greatest wrestler on the planet, well, you know what I mean? He's obviously a well-rounded fighter as well, but it's not as if there's one thing that like, oh, dude, you have to super prepare for this. He's just an elite level fighter that's put it all together well. So it's a big step up in competition for Bilal Muhammad. But I mean, you're getting a Leon Edwards that hasn't fought in how long? You know what I mean? What's that timing going to be like? So, you know, it's a risky fight for Bilal Muhammad, but it's a risky fight for Leon Edwards too, man, because he's facing somebody that I don't want to say has nothing to lose, but yeah, kind of has nothing to lose. You know what I mean? If you do lose, well, you weren't in the top anyway, and you got this opportunity and you got this exposure. So I think Leon Edwards deserves a lot of credit here, man. I said it ahead of the Khamzat Chimaev matchup that he deserved a lot of credit for taking the fight. I'll say it for this one too, man. Leon deserves a lot of respect for what he's willing to do. You know, yeah, it's been a rough stretch for him, and you know, some of it was his own doing, right? I mean, he did have one opportunity to fight, but he admitted, he's like, look, this would not be the best me. It's not a great scenario for me. So it's been a tough stretch for him. But look, this is a dangerous fight for Leon Edwards. I think he should win the fight. I think he is, you know, he is that guy. Leon Edwards is a great fighter, and he should win this fight. But when you think about the, you know, the layoff and all that, and the fact that Bilal kind of has, as I said, nothing to lose, it's a dangerous one.
Did you see the post that Leon Edwards posted? Well, just a picture of him on Instagram last week. The shape he's in, he's like a Greek god. Honestly, I've never seen him look that ripped before.
I didn't. I'll have to take a look at it. You know, it's funny because I'm not actually it's weird. I'm not covering this. So I leave tomorrow night to go to Philadelphia because I'm calling fights, Cage Fury Fighting Championship on UFC Fight Pass with CM Punk. So we're calling fights on Thursday and Friday. So I'm a little bit less dialed into this one than normal just because I don't have to write stories and do interviews and all that. Like, to be honest, but it's gonna be great. I'm gonna be back on Saturday night. And I'm just gonna be plopped down on the couch like a fan watching fights, which I never get to do that. So I'm excited for it. Yeah, man, I never get to do that. It's been a while, man. It's been a while. So I'm excited for that, but I'll have to go check that out. I did hear somebody else talking about that and said that he looks like he's just in incredible shape.
Well, I mean, crack open a few cold ones like Stone Cold Steve Austin used to and enjoy yourself on fight night. Before you go, the show that you're calling, is anyone that we need, any up and comers that we need to know about, need to start following on social media and stuff like that?
I'll tell you one, man. I'm really intrigued by the main event of, I believe it's Thursday night. So I'm looking on my notes, but Pumi Nakuda is the gentleman's name, and he actually, it is Thursday night's card. He's actually fighting for the top. He's just 2-0 in his career right now. He's another Ray Longo guy, and he actually trains alongside Aljamain. He trains along Merab Dvalishvili, and they both have credited him for being a great training partner. And Ray Longo has said that, you know, he sees this guy as kind of a next wave of UFC, you know, type caliber fighter. He's only 2-0, but he's challenging for the title, and he's facing Alberto Trujillo for the flyweight title. Alberto Trujillo came in last time as kind of the opponent, so to speak, for Santo Curatolo, who was the undefeated flyweight, and he upset him. So to be honest, that's the one I'm most excited about, is to see what Puma Nakuda brings to the table. There's also on Friday night, there's a guy named Johan Linus, who's a welterweight fighting out of Canada, he's come in and had a couple of back-to-back highlight reel knockouts, flying knee type stuff. He's a dangerous striker. So it's good, man. If you've never watched the CFFC show, tune in on Fight Pass. They're fun, man. The talent that they bring in is great. The production is top notch, man. They do it right. And you got the commentary team of me and CM Punk, man. Well, what else do you want? Come on.
I actually, after the last time we spoke, I actually subscribed to Fight Pass. So
nice.
I'm a paying customer now. So I'll definitely check it out this weekend. Is there anything that you want to shout out? Anything else that you just want to kind of cover off?
No, that's it, man. Obviously, MMA Junkie for all of your coverage needs. If you want to hear more of me rambling about MMA, check out the MMA Roadshow. It's a podcast we do every single week. You can find it, you know, in all the usual places.
Good stuff. All right. Well, John, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for your time for watching. Like I say, always please do subscribe, like, and share. And if you like this kind of content, but just in audio format, you can have a listen on just in the description. Go in the description. All the links are there for whichever podcast platform you use. Thank you very much for watching. Cheers, John. Thank you very much for your time, man. Really appreciate it. Cheers, mate.
No worries. Thanks, brother.